time to shuffle up. With Duncan, Jeff, and Sloan, let's fill our cups. Commander decks in hand, the battle's about to start. A podcast for the legends, where magic meets the heart. Commander's Pod, where the stories unfold. With heroes and villains, new and old. Duncan, Jeff, and Sloan guide the way. In the world of EDH we play.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Commander's Pod once again. Thank you for joining us. You may have noticed last week we did not have an episode. We had a hurricane instead. So sorry about that, but we're back. And just sans Jeff, we have Andrew with us today.
Hello, everyone.
And Sloan's here as always.
Hello.
And as always, I'm Duncan. Thanks again. Today we're going to talk about the Rules Committee meltdown. They've passed things off to Wizards. I'm sure by now you've all heard. This is old news at this point. But we're going to talk about what that means for EDH, how we feel about it, just kind of the ins and outs and things of that nature. We're also going to talk about the tier system they're talking about implementing. But before that, let's talk about, so the three of us, along with one other player, were playing in a pod last night, playing Archenemy Commander, which there's a better name for it. What's the actual?
Well, we were playing Arc Villain Rumble, the variant format where everyone starts with a scheme deck, as if you were playing the 3v1 Archenemy format. But in this variant format, everybody's an Archenemy, so we all have the villainous urge.
That gave Andrew a chance to not have to be killed first. We were all the problem.
Well, some of us more than others.
Yes.
I mean, wasn't I killed first anyway?
I mean, yes, but that was just happenstance.
Purely coincidental.
Yes, exactly.
It's not because you are the arch enemy of all arch enemies. It was just a coincidence. Pay no attention. If it happens again, just an anomaly. Pay no attention.
Right.
Yes, of course.
But so the arch enemy cards came with the Duskmourn precons. There was also, you can get some from the old arch enemy 4 deck set they put out a few years ago.
Yep, there was a box set of Nicol Bolas versus the Gatewatch not too long ago as well that had those scheme cards.
Yes, that's the one I have. It's the versus the Gatewatch. I have those and I have the Duskmourn. But we were using, I didn't have mine last night, so the ones we were using were all from the Duskmourn. We each had a deck of 10, right?
Yeah. We were each packing a 10-card scheme deck. I believe Duncan's was the pack that came with the Rakdos group slug deck.
Right.
I was
the first game.
Yeah. For the first game, I was using kind of a 50-50 mixture of Bolas and I think Infernal Machine scheme decks.
Okay.
Or scheme cards.
All right. And then halfway through, him and I switched because they were all his anyway.
Yeah.
But he was nice enough to let me switch because the one I was using for my deck was not really, there was a lot of attacky cards and I was playing Jin-Gitaxias, which I do not attack at all.
Yeah.
I usually don't even have creatures on the board most of the time. But the way it works is you draw your cards as normal, do your mulligans, everything. You have this 10-card scheme deck. And after you draw for turn, you can reveal a scheme.
Right.
And some of them are ongoing and have an ongoing effect. Some of them have an instantaneous effect.
Right.
So, Sloan, why don't you tell us, because I believe you went first in that first one, and boy, it was something.
Yeah, so I got to go first, and I have never played this before. So I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I just draw a card, and they're like, yeah, and you just flip over the top one, and you do whatever it says. I was like, all right. So I flipped it over, and then it was one that basically creates treasures. It's a dockside based off of the enchantments and artifacts your opponents control. However, if it's less than 4, you get to create 4 treasures. So I was first turn, first round. I put it out and I was playing my Prosper deck. And as soon as I put it out, I just told the table, I was like, listen, I'm going to apologize in advance for what's about to happen. And he's like, why? Duncan was like, why? What do you have, like Dark Ritual? I was like, yeah, actually I do. And I put down my black mana, I tap it for Dark Ritual. He was like, at least you don't have seething. So I was like, actually, that's the next card I'm casting.
Literally, that's how it happened too. Like I called those
word
two
for
cards.
word. And then so by the end of my turn, when it was all said and done, the dust had settled. I had cast every single card in my hand except for one because it was another land, so I couldn't do anything with it, including casting a Jessica's Will for 7 mana and 3 draw exiles because I was able to cast my commander, Plus, I cast a crime novelist, which doubles basically my treasures whenever I sack them. It gives me an additional red in my pool whenever I sacrifice an artifact, and puts a 1/1 counter on them. And I had spent, I believe, we think somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 35-ish mana probably in that first turn.
Yeah, I mean, you counted up to 25
I was,
after the fact.
Right, yeah, I was doing math
and then
this
lost
morning.
Track, but you cast a Jeskai Will, which we know gave you 7 after
Right,
that.
and it gave me 3 cards to cast from exile, which would have given me 3 more treasures, which would have counted for at least 2 mana. And I had literally nothing left on my board in regards to mana available. Like all my mana was
You
spent.
only had 1 or 2 cards left in hand.
I had 1 card left in hand, and it was a land.
It was a land.
Yeah, I cast all 6 cards from my hand, plus the 3 cards from exile from Jessica's Will, plus my commander. So I cast 6, 7, 8, 10 cards I cast on turn 1 with.
It had to be a little more than that too, because Crime Novelist had, I think, like 5 or 6 counters on it at the end of turn 1.
Yeah, I think he had. Yeah, I think it was 5. He had 5.
So there was 5 red.
Yeah, that's 5 red mana right there. So yeah, that's what. So I was probably easily in a neighborhood of probably mid 30s, close to almost 40 mana on turn 1. First turn ever.
And who needs Dockside? You just play Archenemy.
Right, and I was just like, I guess this is how game works, right?
But so just for the listeners, I mean, with that, you had to have won, right?
Unfortunately, I did not, because as the name of the game goes, everyone's like, "Oh, so kill him first?" I'm like, "Yeah, probably."
But that's not what happened.
That's not what happened.
Somebody killed Andrew.
My
first.
turn 1 was almost as explosive. I had a whole pile of mana rocks. I was playing Otari at the time.
Yeah.
And I was staring down a Grim Monolith, Soul Ring, and some other stuff on turn 1.
Right.
I think I cast like 3 or 4 mana rocks. And I'm sitting there going, okay, turn 2 Athari. I have a Shryonic Resonator ready to go, and I'll have the mana to use it. I'm like, we're going to have like 6 or so Rebels for turn 2.
Which did happen.
Yes.
And as
was
I
my
remember
downfall.
it, you guys kind of kept that board state for 2 rounds.
Yeah, for 2 rounds.
And
it started off that is a nut first turn.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. Well, I got a pretty good one too.
Yeah.
And
I
then
mean, nowhere near that, but it was
my
really
turn
good.
2 was better than my turn 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Duncan's over in the corner going, I'm not part of this game, am I?
Same with Bryce. Bryce
Yep.
and I both, our first schemes were nothing.
Yeah.
But then turn 2, his scheme allowed him to take control of all non-land permanents.
Behold my master stroke.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the name of it.
Yeah.
And literally all of them. So all the stuff that they had both put out were now
Bryce
and
got.
you have to attack the person who owns them
Yes.
with the creatures you get.
So Otari's rebellion rebelled against Otari.
Well, the funny thing was too, because so on my turn, my second scheme was the ongoing one where I get to pick a creature at the beginning of combat. It gets +2/+2, can't be blocked, has vigilance, and so I picked Crime Novelist because he was already 5 counters bigger. Now he's 2/2 and he has vigilance and can't be blocked. So I hit. Then Andrew steals him from me with his card, and then Bryce steals him. But because I'm the owner, Bryce has to hit me with the crime. Now I'm like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And because he kept he was sacking artifacts. He also was putting counters on it. So I think Crime Novelist before it died had 11 counters on it.
Yeah.
And that it was crazy.
It was crazy.
It was. I mean,
Now-
it was definitely fun. That is a fun format to play if anyone wants to shake up Commander.
Yeah. Now,
it's definitely fun.
How did you die, Andrew?
So, like I said, Bryce played that Behold My Master Stroke.
Yes.
And by that point, I had 3 turns.
Right.
Otari was out. I had, I believe, 6 rebels. I was going to be killing a player on the next turn just from sheer volume of rebels.
Right.
And like I said, he took my entire board state. I got rid of all the treasures that I had lying around, so he didn't get those. But
they went on to the Crime Novelist, which made it bigger when it hit me in the face, which was just the coolest.
I had all of those mana rocks. I only had 3 land in play, but he took the whole rest of my board state. He got like 9 mana from me.
Yeah.
He got, like I said, I want to say 18 power worth of creatures.
Yeah, he got a lot.
And between that and...
Well, 18 off of you, he had another like 10 or something.
Yeah, because a Crime Novelist, because you sacked your treasures, it saw those. So because you had stolen him from me, so it put the 3 counters. Because I think it was 3 treasures you sacked, which then technically made you double mana. So, so it had 3 counters on it, which was, I think at that point, 8 or 9 counters on it. It was silly. It was
crazy.
And then he had treasures that he could sack him. It was absurd.
Yeah, it was nutty. And I did end up winning that game.
Right.
Purely because I got no cards the first 3 rounds. I think even after Brace played that, I still did nothing on my turn. Passed turn, played a land. And then I think the next time I got a scheme that would let me copy a scheme if I wanted, I held it. And the next time I wanted to, I could copy a scheme.
Right.
And then it was 1 or 2 rounds later, I got an extra turn. So I got 2 extra turns, and that was it. That was
but proving the theory in multiplayer that sometimes you don't have to be the strongest player at the table, just the least obviously threatening.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
And there was a board wipe played somewhere in there too. One of the schemes wiped the board. So that definitely let me catch up. Because I think if all those beaters had been there, even with what Bryce did, you guys were going to... it was going to be a battle
my
between
beaters
you two.
followed me to the grave.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
Mine just throat punched me and then came back to my side of the board like, hey, buddy, how you doing? I'm like, oh, thanks.
No hard feelings.
Yeah, no hard feelings.
So that was our Archenemy game last night.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. Highly recommend it. I actually think it's more fun to have everybody be the Archenemy than when you play against Andrew and he's the Archenemy. So
if you give me Archenemy schemes, you're sealing your own doom.
Yeah. It was fun for sure.
Yep. You didn't have any triggers this week, right?
Well, I mean, I will say, so I kind of do have one.
Okay.
And it has a little bit to kind of do with not just magic, but it is magic related. So we've kind of talked about it before where we've talked about how people sometimes like rush other people. And then sometimes people on the other side of the coin take too long to take a turn.
Yes.
So my trigger is I don't like the people that rush people and take too long on their turn because they're not paying attention. So it's a combination of all of them. We play D&D together, me and Duncan do. And sometimes this happens at our D&D games where someone decides to start looking up scores for games or something like that on their phone, or they decide when it's about to be their turn, they're going to go get something to eat and we have to wait 10 minutes for them to come back to get from food.
Yep.
And then the same thing happens in Magic too, where sometimes someone who's not paying attention then takes 5 extra minutes to try to finish their turn, and then they get upset at other people when they're not going quickly. And it's like, well, you aren't even paying attention. Like, like you're not like, this is ridiculous. Like, so it is something that's a little irritating to me because I feel like, well, I get it if you're upset because you're taking quick turns and you're paying attention and someone's just taking a long time because they're reading the same card, the one card in their hand that's like a land 5 times. Like, can I do anything? Like, stop it. No one.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, if you're going to be at a game, I recommend being present for the game. Try not to be distracted.
So number one, it's something I think we have all done.
Right.
At some point. We've all done it. We've all been that person.
Absolutely.
And I will say, Andrew even acknowledges, so at the shop we play at, they have TVs.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what's on that TV.
That's not true.
It sometimes is true.
They just don't put the sorts of things on the TV that I have no interest in seeing most of the
But
time.
I have seen
Yeah,
it
it's
where you're
almost
like,
like it's a
I've
nerd
seen this
store.
a million times. This shouldn't distract me. And yet you'll still, you fail your wisdom save and you're just staring up at the TV. And he admits that. He knows it happens to him. You know, we all have those moments.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there are also players that make it habitual.
Oh, yeah, that's all they do.
And they do seem to sometimes then be the ones that complain when somebody else's
someone's
turn
it's
is
like,
taking
my
too long.
man, like, you're literally on your phone and then you're asking me whose turn it is. You're not paying attention to anything that's happening. Like, come on, my guy. Like, stop it. So if you're going to be sitting down a game, I know that distractions happen. I am married. I have 3 kids. I know Duncan's married. He has a child. I know Andrew is Andrew. So, but
I'm
the point,
married to the game.
that's right. But the point is that if at all humanly possible, don't add distractions to yourself, especially when you're trying to play a game that needs you to be present, whether it be Magic or D&D, because you missing a trigger, or in D&D, for example, a reaction that could have saved somebody, and it's because, oh, I was checking the score of this golf tournament that's going on right now. It's like, well, we're playing this game. Be
I
present.
mean, if you're going to do it, at least look up a real sport. If you drive to get from your point to your point in your game, it's not a real sport. Unless, I mean, maybe NASCAR, I guess you could say that's different. But otherwise, like, Also, the other thing I heard is if you can hold a beer through most of the game, it's not a sport.
I mean, there are beer leagues for a reason.
Yes.
And it's because they want to try to turn everything into a beer sport. So,
Now I'm just imagining gymnastics holding a beer.
oh my God, dude.
man, that would be bonus points.
Yeah.
Golden child, don't spill the water.
They have like one of those
I
little
forgot about.
thingies.
Yeah, that was good. That was good.
Yeah.
Golden child.
But yeah, so just try to be present. Don't be the guy that's distracted by every little thing and that's not paying attention and then being upset when other people aren't being fast at their turns or taking too long. Just be present in the games.
I don't think it's very fair that you talked about Jeff when he was gone.
Listen, I would tell Jeff that to his face. Like,
You have.
I have. Actually, yeah, I have. I have literally told Jeff to his face, stop looking at your phone.
Yes.
I
And
will say-
he is not one of the habituals, but he does it.
Yeah,
he does it a lot.
And again, I will say this too, Duncan, Jeff, and the other guys we play D&D with. Out of all the guys, 4 of them are managers at our company. So I understand that there are legitimate reasons why they have to step out of the room to get a phone call. And I'm not, again, saying that anytime you take a phone, like ignore every phone call. I don't care if your wife's calling you 50 times because she's dying in a ditch. Like, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when you decide to pick up your phone to start playing, Clash Royale or Clash of Clans, you're just distracting yourself on purpose. You're intentionally not being a part of the game. That's what I mean. So
I will say there is a corollary to what you're saying as well. Just because it's not your turn in a game of Magic doesn't mean that there aren't things you should be doing that are pertaining to the game.
yeah.
You should be strategizing during other people's
Right.
turns.
You need to know what they played.
Yeah,
It's gonna come back to bite you
Well,
if you don't pay attention.
And one of the
Yeah,
other things I say too is, a lot of people always complain about how they always miss their triggers for their cards and stuff. You know what a great time to reread your cards is to remind yourself of triggers? When it's someone else's turn. Because if you have triggers that are going on the stack and that are important, you need to make sure you're doing them at certain times. If it's someone else's turn, it's like, okay, I'm going to let him think for a minute. He's thinking, I'm going to reread all my cards real quick to make sure I remember all my triggers and make sure I'm doing everything correctly. I'm going to look at my hand and reread the cards in my hand. Like, for someone like myself who's a slow reader, that's important for me to keep reading everything so I can try to remember what I have out and what things are going to activate and trigger at what times.
But Andrew is very attentive to the game, I will say, as a general rule.
Yeah.
But you chuckled when I said, because I believe like 2 or 3 times, you're like, wait, how are you doing? Oh, what's out? What happened?
So the problem becomes in larger games, more than 4 players.
Right.
Sometimes there's one person way off in the periphery.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, let me get out my spyglass here.
Oh, I usually try and be that person when Andrew's at the table. We were playing with 5 people last night when he was getting mesmerized by the TV.
Yeah, Duncan
Yeah.
was literally sitting at a different table playing with us. It was crazy.
Double whammy of being off in the in left field and also having distracting videos playing. And I'm like, okay, is anyone doing something like this? Did anyone cast a non-creature spell this turn?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but we're all guilty of it. We've all fallen to it. But just if you can, try to not intentionally distract yourself.
And if you do, if it happens, if you fail your wisdom save, don't then complain when somebody else is taking too long.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So, but yeah, that's one of my triggers.
Yeah. No, I get it. That's good. I think Jeff would approve.
Well, I mean, it's not a first world problem like him. So right now, just so you guys know, Jeff is on vacation. So his first world problem right now that he's probably would say is going to be a trigger. I'm going to guess because he's probably not going to
I
watch
know what
this.
it is, by the way. So
You do? Oh, I was going to say we should guess to see what he's going to complain about for his next trigger when
what
he
his
comes
first
back.
Oh no,
Yeah.
I'm saying what if he were to write it right now, I know what it would be.
Oh well, okay.
He was
so
complaining. What were you guys saying?
I said I bet he's going to complain about how long it takes to go through airport.
No, not the airport. How long it takes to get there.
How long it takes to get there?
Yeah,
Oh
so
my
he's going
gosh.
to France.
That's nice.
It is nice.
Yeah.
It's not for business, it's because of business. He's one of the owners. And
Yeah.
we're a top vendor for one of our suppliers, and so they take their top vendors on a big trip every year. So this year it was to France. And so he was complaining though, it's like 14 hours before he gets there. And he's like, if this was a vacation I was planning, I would never do this for this. I'm like, you are so full of it. Because the way Jeff is he'll do something because it's cool, but then as he gets closer, like the little details will get him.
Yeah.
But so yeah, it's not how long it takes to get through the airport. It's
but-
how long it takes to get there.
International.
So you're saying
flights.
so we're gonna bet because he's not gonna watch this or listen to it, so we're fine. So thank you, Jack. So you're saying that you think his first trigger is going to be how long it takes to get to France.
Yes.
I'm going to bet that it's actually going to be because he wasn't in the airport yet, right? He didn't get through everything when you talked to
No,
him.
he
So-
even now is probably not at the airport yet.
Right. So my bet is that his trigger, the next one when we do it, is going to be how hard it is to get through security for an international flight. I bet he's going to complain about how long it takes.
You don't even when you're done with security,
Right.
you have to show your passport before you get on the plane.
And then when you get off the plane, you got to do a bunch of rigmaroles.
yeah,
So
I
that's
I
my
haven't
thing.
been to France since before 9/11. I don't even
that's
want to
the
imagine.
last time I
Yeah.
went too. Yeah.
Andrew, I know you're not part of the regular crew here, but if you had to guess, what do you think Jeff's trigger would be? Because I know you've listened to some of the episodes and you kind of know his mindset, and you've played a couple of games with him. You know how he works.
I'm sure that he'll mention the cost of the food in the airport.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's a good
All right,
one.
mark it on the tape. We got travel to France, time in the airport to get through security, food costs. All right, we'll see who was right.
Place your bets.
Yeah, place your bets. Whoever wins gets a pack from the other guys.
Ooh.
So now let's move on to that doesn't do what you think it does. And I'm doing it a little different this time because we're talking about the rules committee being handed over to control
Right.
for Wizard of the Coast to control.
Right.
And the that doesn't do what you think it does. I've been hearing all day, every day for like 2 weeks. They're going to undo those bans.
Yeah.
They're going to undo those bans. You watch. So that doesn't do what you think it does. Just because Wizards, who liked those cards, got control of the rules committee, does not mean they are going to undo those bans.
Yeah.
I have a suspicion that some bans will be lifted and others won't. And it won't necessarily be the ones that everyone is expecting.
Right.
I've been watching the MTG Finance type stuff
Okay.
of late, and a lot of cards that have been long on the ban list have been spiking lately. And I think there's a lot of speculation in the air about what they could potentially take off.
Yeah.
I'm leaning a little bit more towards the trivial options, your coalition victories that no one ever cared about and were never relevant and will still not be relevant.
Right.
I'm gonna. Okay, so I want to point out when we talked about the rules committee, not last episode, but the episode before, I said I thought they were handing over CEDH to Wizards. Turns out they handed over everything. I'm
Everything.
still taking that.
Yeah.
I still.
You know, I'll give you a half point. That's worth a half
That's
point.
a half point.
I'll give it to you.
You know what I'm saying? So what I'm calling now is that I do not think they will unban, not saying ban, they will not unban anything for at least a year.
So I will say that because they did release a big article about Wizard of the Coast getting control of the format in regards to the rules. And I watched a couple of videos on it, the most notable, the Command Zone. And one of the things that they did mention at the very, very end of the article, and I think it was 2 sentences long, was we are reevaluating the entirety of the ban list, and we will see what we feel like may or may not need to be changed. And that was literally all they said about it.
Right.
So there is the idea of we know from the mouth of the horse, they are looking at the ban list. We know that to be true. I think that I'm more with Andrew. I do think they're going to unban some of these cards that kind of don't make sense to be on there, that are very like they kind of shouldn't be on there because there's already other cards that do a way better job of it.
Or they were the pet peeves of Sheldon back when he was still with us.
Right.
Like I said, I don't think anyone has ever really complained about extremely difficult alternate win cons.
Right.
It must have been some sort of personal thing that he had there. But
Yeah.
I will go further. I think Jeweled Lotus is coming back off the ban list.
So if
Because
Before a year?
Before a year has happened. I don't think it'll be in the very next BNR, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's the one after that. From what I've heard, like I said, I watched that discussion with the Command Zone as well.
right.
And from what those guys were saying, Wizards was not in favor of that ban. And I think in the fullness of time, once they've finished developing their tier system, which we're going to get to in a little bit,
Right.
I think Jeweled Lotus is coming off the banned list. I don't know what the ultimate fate of Crypt or Dockside will end up being. I think that one is far too difficult to call at this point. And I think probably Nadu is staying gone forever.
Oh, yeah. Nadu is 100% never coming back to Commander. Now, if they ever make a CEDH committee, which we can talk about that, whether we think that's going to happen or not.
Right.
You know, that can be a separate conversation. But the other reason why I don't think, at least for a year, they will unban anything is when they did hand over the committee to Wizards, they said that they had a long conversation with Wizards about the spirit of the format, what they were trying to accomplish, what Sheldon's vision, as he had explained it to them, was for the format, and kind of that they heartfelt that this was the right moves by banning these, and that they really hoped that Wizards would uphold them.
I really do believe that these bans came from a place of sincerity at the RC.
Yes.
The one thing, regardless of whether or not I personally believe these bans were wise or good for the game, I have my own opinions on that. I am 100% willing to extend them the courtesy of their being sincere in their beliefs that this was the right call for Commander.
No, I don't think why would they do something that they intentionally thought would hurt Commander as a game?
The alternate interpretation is not that it was a malicious action, but that it was a necessary action of ego. In other words, that this was their vision of it, and regardless of what others would have interpreted as or agreed with it, this is what they thought the format should be.
Right.
But having listened to quite a few stakeholders, I think that the RC was quite sincere that this was what the format was meant to be by its original creator, and that this was almost a sacred act of gardening, that even though it was going to cause trouble, and they knew it was going to be a controversial decision, it had to be done.
Well, and I think that by doing it all at once, I mean, we're kind of getting back into what we talked about a couple episodes ago, but I think by doing it all at once, they were like, well, let's just rip off the Band-Aid.
Yeah.
Let's not peel it slowly so it hurts. Let's rip it off. It'll hurt for just a moment, and then we can move on. I think that's kind of what they thought. I don't think they really thought it out well, but we've talked about that. But regardless, I believe... So now let's get into the talk of this in general, because number one, Wizards of the Coast is owned by Hasbro.
Right.
This is the concern, because Hasbro is a greedy corporation, as they have proven. I mean, they have showed us time and time again that they do not care about the integrity of the game.
Right.
That Hasbro is greedy.
I go back and forth on this particular point.
So I'm saying Hasbro.
Yeah.
I believe that within Wizards of the Coast, they are torn, because I believe that there are people in the company who truly care about the game.
Oh, absolutely.
And they really want what's best for Magic. No. And they really want what's best for the Magic players.
What I'm saying, though, is I don't know if we can completely pin this on Hasbro. I think there's a contingent inside Wizards of the Coast which have a Masters of Business Administration mindset, where they truly believe the game is under-monetized, the players can be squeezed harder, and that this is not producing as much money as it could. Regardless of how much money it is currently making, it could produce more.
Well, I think that you're going to have that within Wizards, because it's owned by the corporate Hasbro, who is going to appoint people that is
precisely what I'm saying. Is you've got the flow of this attitude backwards. I think this is coming from within part of Wizards of the Coast, flowing up to Hasbro. You have to remember, the Hasbro CEO used to be part of Wizards of the Coast. And like I said, these decisions came after his tenure started. I'm not entirely certain that there isn't the greed that we've all identified and have lambasted repeatedly isn't coming from within Wizards and moving into Hasbro.
But I think if you look at Hasbro's other corporate properties,
right,
the greed is very apparent.
Well,
I mean, it's not new to this CEO.
Yeah, without a doubt, Hasbro has been in a difficult situation for some time, and Wizards of the Coast has been their lifeline.
Yes. And they have been squeezing that lifeline for every drop that they can get.
Yes.
So I mean, regardless of where it came from, I believe the majority of Wizards of the Coast, the people working there,
oh yeah, the designers are very clearly passionate about
the designers and the some of the media people. I mean, I think most of that portion of the company truly want what's best for the game, what's good for the players. But I think that you could call it at this point, it's a snake eating its own tail.
You don't work at Wizards of the Coast unless you love the game. The wages are terrible.
Right. But I think at this point you can't tell where it starts and where it ends as far as the corporate greed. At this point, it's a snake eating its own tail, and it's just
it might be an Aurora Borealis, or I don't know. Pronunciation.
But anyway, there's this fear that being that Hasbro owns Wizards, that is going to destroy the format.
Yeah.
I want to say that, again, that doesn't do what you think it does. It might be that that's not necessarily the case, because WoW, there is corporate greed, and there's always going to be corporate greed, and no matter whether it comes from within Wizards or within Hasbro, or they're the same thing, whatever, or even if we're misinterpreting and there really isn't as much as we think is there's going to be some, but that doesn't mean anything bad for the EDH community, the EDH game. I point to the fact that even though they print these cards, they have no problem banning them in their other formats. They were very proud of Nadu. They loved Nadu when they made Nadu. But they banned him in just about every format very quickly.
Yeah, Commander was the last format I think he got.
That was kind of a whoopsie.
Banned in.
Yeah. But then they realized that they're going to have whoopsies.
Yeah.
And they have, I believe, holding up Modern as an example.
Well, Morrow said, I believe at one point, that it's always better to overshoot and make mistakes in this way than to undershoot and bore players. And
well, I mean, now you're just talking about standard.
No, this is, yeah. I mean, I hate rotation as much as the next guy, but
we got foundations now. So.
We look at these mistakes and we say, oh, they overshot. This card is too good. It's causing problems here, there, and everywhere. But maintaining the excitement of a constantly evolving game while still keeping the game both fresh and exciting is no easy task. And I do want to call out our designers for doing a pretty spectacular job, with a few minor exceptions here and there, of continuing to keep this game fresh and relevant for decades.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I think it's kind of you're damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of situations, where no matter what happens, there's always going to be a way for people who love Magic to complain about it that are inside of the game, right? So no matter if, for example, you overshoot with Nadu and Jeweled Lotus, we'll say, because I think those are pretty good examples of them thinking they've created something that's going to be really, really cool and healthy for the format, and then people very quickly showing them, well, they kind of get out of hand kind of quickly.
Hull Breacher.
Hull Breacher is another great example. Hull Breacher.
Hull Breacher was fine.
Hull Breacher, yeah, from the token blue draw cards player. Yeah, Hull Breacher's fine. That tells you it's not. But I think the idea of, pushing the boundaries to see what is and isn't good for the game, I think is the right mentality, right? You don't want to have these cards come out where people aren't excited about them because they literally don't do anything, and there's no design or there's no, I guess, pushing the boundaries of them. So the idea that, hey, they have no idea what they're doing. Why would they create Nadu? That's a horrible thing. Yeah, it's when you saw it played out finally in the real world, you found out really quickly, okay, this was a mistake. But imagine a world where they didn't even make that card and they made a much weaker, less exciting version of him. And it's like,
I was playing during Fallen Empires and Homelands.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what, when there's no new mechanic and everything is conservative and lesser to what's come before,
I'm sorry, hold on a minute.
Considerably less
Didn't
interesting.
banding come from Homelands?
Banding?
I believe.
No, that's Alpha. Banding, Benella Shiro, I believe, is in Anbu in Alpha Beta Unlimited.
Huh.
So no, banding goes back to the very beginning. There were no new mechanics whatsoever in Homelands. It was literally designed by their marketing, or not their marketing, their billing folk, I want to say.
Yeah.
Like they were like, anybody want to design a set? Richard Garfield's busy.
Yeah. Right. Well, and so that's the thing is like, I don't think there's anything wrong with making more normal cards and having them part of a set, or even having a set where like every card doesn't break the format or push the boundaries, right? When you have these couple of cards that do that, it is exciting and it is cool, and it does bring kind of new life, I guess, to the game. It kind of revitalizes it. So, there is something to say about that. And like I said, though, at the same time, there's going to be people who are going to be like, we don't need new mechanics every single set. Just give us one set where it's normal and nothing happens, which, yeah, it might be nice to have that for once in a while.
Well,
where,
I mean, I've kind of, so just thinking out loud here, Duskmourn didn't do anything super crazy.
I mean,
Rooms was a little different, but it's really just 2 enchantments on one.
Survivor was nice. I like Survivor. Eerie wasn't too bad. It was basically Constellation with a tiny little added bonus of caring about rooms.
Right.
I agree. Rooms were kind of so-so.
Yeah. I mean, there's just 2 enchantments on one card. That's all it is.
Well, it's
And
kind
things
of
that
like
care
a
about
level up enchantment.
Yeah. I guess that's a good way of thinking of it.
Effectively, it functions in that same
Right.
way. You can buy your 2 sides in whichever order you want.
Correct. Yeah.
But yeah, there were good things about Duskmourn. Like, honestly, this set won me over. I came into it expecting Duskmourn to be a very meme-heavy slasher film reference, sort of
A shtick.
80s,
Well,
80s haunted house set that doesn't.
Well,
It feels like
come
it
on.
should be Universes Beyond, but
Almost, yeah.
in the end, I like the setting.
Well, but why wouldn't you think that that's how it's going to be when they came out with Murder at Karlov and have a literal card called Scapegoat? I mean, come on.
Well, I will say
Holy
though,
cow.
I will.
Holy cow. Thank you.
Well, excuse me. Are you not forgetting some of the cards that came in Duskmourn, i.e., the hand that feeds, which is literally a hand that has a mouth on it, or the bedhead? What was it?
But those aren't. I don't think those are fine. I think that's very clever, and it could
But
be
it's
something
very
I can see.
it's like if a dad created a bunch of puns for cards for a horror set is basically what happened. There were so many of those where it's like, a bedhead monstrosity. I'm going to put a bed on his head and make him huge.
Okay, now that one for sure.
But there was a bunch of them that were like that in the set.
I chuckled at the bedhead
right.
monster.
But my point is like, yes, there is some of that. But however, in this set, they did give us a card that was everyone was like, that's gross.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So they did a good job with, I would say, even though I'm not a horror fan, I'm not a huge fan of like, I didn't like a lot of the arts because I'm like, a little too much for me. I'm good.
The showcases weren't inspired either. I didn't care for the double exposures. The Lurking Evil didn't have enough difference between the 2 variants.
Yeah.
Like I said, the borderless cards are nice as always. But
Yeah, they always do a good job with those. So, but my point is, you can make a set that's not like crazy, but still give us good stuff in it. Like I do think that, one, being a dad, I thought a lot of the puns I did were hilarious. Like I caught them when I did our pack openings for Duncan. I caught some of them. I was like, I'm just now seeing these and these are freaking hysterical, which doesn't make any sense for a horror setting, but whatever. I don't care. But then they did give us some good cards too that are like, a lot of people are like, I want to go get that card out of this set now. And they did some good stuff. So again, there is a way to.
That's
think
my point. Is I
appease-
don't think that any of the rules in Duskmourn drastically changed much. They were little tweaks.
Right.
They were little add-ons to things that instead of Manifest, now it's Manifest Dread, which they've kind of done a different thing on Manifest for the past few sets.
Because
it's definitely a welcome upgrade, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, for sure. It makes it, a little more feasible, a little better. But my point is that they didn't reinvent the horse, right? Reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
They took things that existed and kind of tweaked them and fit them into the theme. So you don't have to go crazy to make a set good. You don't have to push too hard. But when you do, going back to what we were talking about, it's good that they're willing to ban it. They're
Right.
not like, no, we printed it. You are buying it.
Right.
Go get it. So they will do the right thing, even though they don't necessarily want to.
I mean, even though it took 3 years for them to do it this last time, they still technically did it.
Right.
You know, and I will say, you know, looking back at this now that we're 2 to 3 weeks out between the bans and the, you know, rules committee being handed over, you know, there's a lot of things that if you sit down rationally and look at it, you can very clearly say, okay, I understand why they got rid of those 3 mana dorks. Nadu, we're not going to talk about. He needed to be gone. We're not going to talk about him. But I understand why they got rid of those 3 cards. I get it. Like, I do understand why. Does it suck? Sure. I didn't own any of them. I didn't own a Jewel Lotus, Mana Crypt, or Dockside. But I still understand why it sucked for people who had those in decks and played those, and they had stuff built around them, even beyond the monetary investment that they put into it, right? Just for the actual gameplay side of it, I do understand that. And I grasp that concept. And when they handed over the rules committee, again, a lot of people just immediately were like, this is the end of Commander. Like, we're dead. This is like, guys, calm down. Like, everyone just take a step back, let it play out. And like we're about to talk about the brackets here soon.
Yeah.
And part of that, again, is everyone. What was the first thing you saw when they showed the very first showing of the brackets or heard? I'll tell you right now. This is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. This is absolutely
so they're
to the extreme.
Society is very much like the sky is falling when things happen that they don't like, especially within Magic the Gathering and like within Commander.
We've always been a little reactionary here in Magic. The Magic is always the game that's dying and just doesn't seem to actually stay dead.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, everything is the end of Commander. Well, Blizzard is actually famous for that.
Before Commander, I'm old enough to remember when everything was the death of Magic.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, not new.
But now EDH is Magic. Yeah. I mean, that's a controversial statement, and it's not 100% true.
It's also not 100% false, though.
Right. But we are
the majority now.
We are the majority.
Yeah, that is the statement I think you can actually back up.
Right.
Commander has become the most predominant format that people play Magic in, aside from just kitchen table players who aren't playing a format.
But I think part of that is because it's less restrictive than most other formats.
Right. I mean,
rotation
I will say
sucks.
That. Yeah.
Rotation
right.
sucks.
I mean, I will say one of the hardest.
But you talk about rotation, but really outside of Standard and Pioneer, there really isn't much rotation. There's
a reason for that.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And if you take all the formats that don't have rotation, you can say that is Magic. Like that is 80 to 90% of Magic.
Eternal formats have dominated Magic.
Right. But the problem is Eternal formats don't require you to keep buying product. You can be like Andrew and only buy the stuff you like.
You can stop anytime.
That you
wink,
say
wink,
that,
nudge,
but I can't.
nudge.
Yeah, Duncan can't stop if he wanted to. Now he's in too deep, man. He's all in.
No. You know what though? This conversation's going a little long, but I want to keep talking about this. There's a lot more still to get into. I think what we're going to do is we're going to stop this for this episode here. We will pick this up next week. I want to thank Jack May at Info Pilgrims. Thank you, Anthony, for joining us. I don't know why I said Anthony. I know of an Anthony, but I don't know.
Apparently, I now
we
have
don't even
another
call
alias.
him Anthony.
Andrew, for joining us. I won't even say kill you first this time because you're still here and it feels kind of wrong. But we will see you guys next time where we will continue this conversation.
Commander's Pod, where the stories unfold, with heroes and villains new and old. Duncan and Sloan guide the way in the world of EDH we play. So tune in, friends, let's draw and go. In the Commander's Pod, the love will show. From our decks to yours, we share the spark in this world of magic. We'll leave a mark.